In early 2021, a single HTTP request was enough to compromise one of the most critical systems in enterprise infrastructure, VMware vCenter. That request could lead to remote code execution on the vCenter server. This is CVE-2021-21973, a vulnerability in VMware vCenter with a CVSS score of 9.8. and one of the most dangerous enterprise bugs of that year. The vulnerability was discovered and responsibly disclosed by security researchers, and VMware was notified privately before the public advisory. VMware vCenter is the central management platform for virtualized environments. It controls SXI hosts, which are the physical servers that actually run virtual machines. It manages virtual machines themselves, handles snapshots, networking, storage, and user permissions. In many organizations, vCenter sits at the very top of the stack, and if a hacker gains control of vCenter, they gain control over everything it manages. The flaw lived inside a vCenter plugin, specifically the VROPS plugin. This plugin exposed an endpoint that accepted user-supplied URLs, but vCenter didn't properly validate where those URLs pointed. Instead of rejecting dangerous requests, it trusted them. As a result, an attacker could trick vCenter into making internal requests on their behalf. This type of vulnerability is known as server-side request forgery, or SSRF, where a server is abused to access internal systems it should never expose. SSRF is like tricking a trusted employee into doing something dangerous for you. You never break in, but the system does it on your behalf. And this is how the attack chain went. Step 1. An attacker sends a specially crafted HTTP request to a vulnerable vCenter endpoint. That request includes a URL controlled by the attacker. vCenter accepts the request without requiring authentication. Step 2. vCenter attempts to fetch that URL. Because the request is processed internally, it isn't restricted like normal external traffic. It can reach services that are never meant to be exposed to the internet, like internal APIs, local services, privileged management components. At this point, vCenter is making internal requests on the attacker's behalf. Step 3. One of those internal requests reaches a component that allows command execution. Because the request is handled by vCenter itself, it runs with vCenter's privileges, leading directly to remote code execution on the server. Remote code execution on vCenter is about as bad as it gets. An attacker could take control of all virtual machines, access sensitive data across the environment, deploy malware or ransomware, create persistence inside the infrastructure, and pivot deeper into the network. Any organization running a vulnerable vCenter instance, especially one exposed to the network, was at serious risk. Once the vulnerability was disclosed, VMware responded quickly. Security patches were released to address the issue. The fix focused on 3 key areas: restricting the vulnerable endpoint, properly validating user-supplied URLs, preventing vCenter from making unsafe internal requests. Organizations that applied the patch were protected. Those that didn't remained exposed. And because vCenter is so widely deployed across enterprise environments, the potential attack surface was massive. There is no public evidence that this vulnerability was widely exploited before it was patched. However, because vCenter manages critical enterprise systems worldwide, a large-scale breach could have resulted in tens or even hundreds of millions in damages, depending on how attackers used that access. CVE 2021-21973 is a reminder that some of the most dangerous vulnerabilities don't rely on complex exploits. vCenter trusted user input, and that trust crossed a boundary, and the entire environment was put at risk. It also shows how internal services can become weapons when exposed, and how a single request can be enough to collapse a system designed to control thousands of others. And that was CVE 2021-21973. CVE-2021-21973, the VMware vCenter SSRF bug that led directly to remote code execution. It could have been far worse if it hadn't been caught early, and if the proof of concept had been made public before the patches were released, this could have been a very different story. If you enjoyed this, we post new CVE breakdowns every other week, along with the longer exploit stories you can fall asleep to. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel grow. I'll see you in the next one.